In life, there are 3 things that are sure to get a rise out of people when they come up at the Thanksgiving dinner table. Other than Grandpa's war stories. That one's a bonus. Politics, religious beliefs, and do you or do you not like the modern-day story of Assassin's Creed?
I think you're going to say racism.
No, that falls under...
is that just my Thanksgiving?
No, that falls under Grandpa's war stories mixed with politics.
Got it.
But this is something where people have been hating on this forever, and I think there's been a subset of people who really enjoyed it. You know, AC1 started out with a very strong presence with it. We've talked about that before, so we're going to talk about kind of how Assassin's Creed as a series and Ubisoft as a company ruined their modern-day story and really wrote themselves into corners and are now apparently moving it completely to the AC Infinity app when that comes out, which I believe was rebranded something like AC Animus, which could be rebranded again. So before we hop into it, if you enjoy the video, you want to leave a like, subscribe, let us know what you think. I do have a question of the day for you. Like to announce it. Do you like the modern day story of Assassin's Creed? Do you like any of it? Did you ever care about it? Do you now? I'm just interested because, I don't know, it seems very contentious. But to kind of start out, Nate, I think you and I talked about this recently. We made a video about one of the biggest missed opportunities of Assassin's Creed 1. And we talked about how, you know, the modern day story was so compelling. It's like a mystery and a conspiracy and all these things rolled into one. So I think they started out really strong with some of this and they kept building, but eventually it's almost like they gave up.
Yeah, it's kind of sad because AC1 through 3, I think, were the most interesting in terms of the modern day story. 4, Unity, Rogue, Syndicate, all those, even like the side games like Liberations and stuff, didn't really have a modern day story.
Mm-hmm. Well, I get well, they have one.
They do have one.
You get Skype calls and Zoom calls basically from people who are like talking to you, and you're like a faceless game developer. I feel like I get COVID flashbacks to all the Zoom calls when I play it. It's like, no, turn it off.
Stop. And then with the
RPG
Origins, RPG, they did actually bring back a modern day story. You play as Layla. It was interesting. Mm-hmm. I did really enjoy it. Probably not as much as the Desmond stuff, but it was very interesting. Mm-hmm. You could read emails. You could go to different locations. You could do whatever. After Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it seems like they really moved away from the modern day story. You know, Mirage was really the backstory of Basim, who is a very important. I don't know if we should give spoilers, but he's a very important character in Valhalla.
Yeah, and I think to the future of the franchise in different ways.
Yeah, right.
I think he's kind of like this looming presence. Like, you know, you got it in Valhalla. He obviously was the main character in Mirage. I think Mirage, if I'm remembering correctly, starts with William Miles talking about Basim, and then it kind of goes into the story, but that's it. Yeah.
So it's kind of at the status now where we're kind of like, well, what's going to be the modern day story if there is one? I just don't know what direction they're going to go yet. But my thing I wanted to bring up is the modern day story, at least with the Desmond and the Layla stuff, was always super interesting. And do
you understand why people hated it, though?
I never really understood why people hated it, because I understand the main point of Assassin's Creed is you want to play as the ancient people. You want to run around Renaissance Rome and play as Ezio. I understand that. I want to do that too.
Not ancient. You're making me feel old, but yes, I agree with you.
Right. Like, I understand. Like, that's the draw. The draw is not playing as Desmond. He's interesting, but I understand people would rather play as Connor.
Right.
In American Revolution, America.
Or Edward.
Or Edward, or any of these people.
I think especially when you get there where it's like they wrote themselves into a corner. Like, they had criticisms with Desmond, but he was a central character you could rally behind.
Well, yeah.
You know, he had his own life and story, but then you get to these faceless game devs and these faceless people that you're playing as just in Abstergo, and I found it interesting where you were reading emails and stuff. But, like, they tried to, I think, play both sides of that coin. Like, they wanted you to feel like you were the character. Like, oh, well, it's from your point of view. You're a game tester at Abstergo. Whoa, isn't that cool? It's you. You're the character. But they didn't know how to do it because they gave that character then zero personality. They're basically a silent protagonist who doesn't matter. And they tried to appeal to the fandom that liked the old story, like Desmond and the conspiracies and stuff, by having you hack terminals and read emails and find things like footage of Desmond's autopsy or things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
So, like, they were trying to play both sides of it, but they played both sides so ineffectually And then they dropped playing the side of it that cared about Desmond and the gods and things like this, or I should say the first civilization, but who present as gods.
Yeah.
They kind of dropped that too, going into things like Unity and Syndicate, and they were just like, well, we'll just have you do some Zoom meetings or something.
Right. Yeah, they kind of didn't really know what to do. And then they brought back Layla and got back into it. But yeah, the thing is, like, that stuff was always interesting. And I don't know why people didn't get into it. I understand people didn't get into the faceless person from Black Flag. I get that. But my thing is, with Desmond and Layla, it wasn't like a main part of the game series, but it was a fun part of it that mattered. Mm-hmm. You know, it was actually interesting being Desmond in AC1 and appearing out of the Animus and talking to Lucy and Warren Vidic and looking at emails and stuff like that, kind of figure out what's going on, and then you hop back in the Animus and go play as Altair. Like, both of them enhanced each other. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I don't know, I've never understood the argument of this stuff isn't interesting. Well, I've always found it interesting.
I think that you should listen to fan feedback to an extent.
Yeah.
You know, like, we talk about that all the time. I think fan feedback is very important, and as a business, fans will pay your bills.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't have fans, you don't have people who care about what you're putting out, it's not that art wouldn't matter at all. Even if you made good art and there was an audience of 0, I think it would still be on its own merits good art. Mm-hmm. But you wouldn't have a business. So I understand that they have to listen, but what it felt to me like was, it almost felt like Ubisoft was listening in a weird way back then, whereas now they don't listen at all. Yeah. You know, so like they heard people complain, oh, I thought the parts of Desmond were boring in 1. So what do? Desmond gets out of the Animus like twice in AC2, yeah. And it's borderline scripted where you run around a room once. And then, oh, well, you know, that was boring too. Okay, well, then we'll give you the villa. You know, you go around the villa. Oh, well, it was empty and dead. Okay, well, we'll write him where he's in Animus Purgatory and he's talking to someone from the story of the previous games with the subject stuff. It's like they kept backtracking on how much they wanted to put in. And then with AC3 and 4, it felt like it was so back and forth. Like AC3, it was like they were fully committed to like making you Desmond, and he was a modern day assassin. You actually even go on, remember the missions you go on?
Yeah, they're fun.
They were awesome.
They're interesting.
And, you know, going up against Cross and things like that. Then in AC4, it was the opposite. Oh, well, Desmond's gone now. Now you're nobody.
Right.
And I feel like it got to a point where they were going back and forth so much that there was no direction to that at all. But AC4, something you wanted to talk about was Watch Dogs.
Yeah, and that's where I think the modern day story could have gone. So one thing I find interesting with Watch Dogs is Watch Dogs came out in 2014 and Black Flag came out in 2013. Now when you're playing Black Flag and you're playing as the faceless Abstergo employee, you can actually dig around and find emails, and you find an email from Bloom from Watch Dogs. So you get this email from Bloom, who is emailing Abstergo Entertainment, and they're emailing about setting up a CTOS system at Abstergo Montreal, which is where the game takes place. Mm-hmm. And CTOS is a thing from Watch Dogs. It's like a security system from Watch Dogs if people haven't played it. Bloom is like the security company from Watch Dogs, where basically they set up this system all over the city, and it can help monitor, track, have cameras set up everywhere, so on. Basically, you're keeping track of all your citizens.
It's even used to blackmail.
It's used to blackmail. It's sold as a security system. You know, you can find criminals faster, stuff like that. But it's mainly used for nefarious purposes. Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, so that's what this email is all about in Black Flag. What I find interesting is Black Flag came out in 2013. Watch Dogs came out in 2014. So for players playing this in Black Flag for the first time, they wouldn't know what any of this stuff is until they played Watch Dogs a year later. Mm-hmm. My point with all of this is this could have been a good way for Assassin's Creed to move forward with the modern day story. Now, in Watch Dogs, you actually have a mission where you're assassinating
Olivier,
this CCO of Abstergo Entertainment. And in Assassin's Creed Origins, there is an email that is in Layla's computer where you can find an image of this mission. that you do in Watch Dogs 1 of Aiden Pierce basically assassinating him. I find that very interesting that they actually went back in Assassin's Creed, first of all, but second of all, this is a great way to transition into your modern day story that I don't feel like they ever really did very well. You know, the modern day story of Assassin's Creed could have to do with Desmond, it could have to do with Abstergo, all this stuff, but why not combine the two? Why couldn't you have ever combined the two? You know, you could have had Abstergo be in the Watch Dogs games. Maybe it's a company, maybe you interact with some of the employees. You could have had DedSec or different people like that from Watch Dogs appear in Assassin's Creed. You know, you could have had a kind of a coinciding modern day story with the two. I mean, it was interesting. But the problem is Ubisoft kept going back and forth on this. You know, in Black Flag, they set up as like, oh yeah, look at them, they're together. And then they'd be like, oh, well, actually, they're not. And then in Legions, they're like, well, now we have an assassin you can play as. And
Darcy, I believe.
Yeah. So it's like they just kept going back and forth with this, the connections to them. It was kind of silly.
Did you know the Watch Dogs mission is called, and I'm going to butcher it as well, in Latin, Requiescat in Pace.
Yes.
Which is rest in peace in Latin.
It's the famous Ezio phrase.
Always said it when he would, kill someone. Also, it's worth noting that in Assassin's Creed 4, during the events of the story, Olivier says he's going on a business meeting to Chicago. Did you know that he doesn't appear in the game again, and it's basically stated in the game that he went missing?
Yeah.
So he doesn't show up again. It's just mentioned that he went missing during a shareholders meeting. Then obviously you mentioned in AC Origins, it was showed that he was executed. But what people don't know about is what happened to him. Because one thing that's worth mentioning is that in AC Origins, it's also mentioned with this, email CCTV footage and all this stuff, that his name was being used in a restaurant 1 year later in Chicago, like to pay for something or whatever. And so people didn't know if this was actually him or if it was a false lead. They don't know if Aiden actually executed him, or if Aiden knocked him out and then the CCTV footage was doctored by either the assassins or by, whoever to show him dying and then he was taken. We don't really know, because the objective was basically to just take him down, not to kill him in the game. Or if it was just a continuity error. So that's worth mentioning too. But in general, like, these two series, it's interesting because, like, they just call it a crossover and then act like it's not canon. And they did the same thing with Watch Dogs Legion. Where they say, like, even the Watch Dogs wiki, it says, like, this mission was seen as a definitive link between the two series being part of the same universe, but with the introduction of Darcy in Watch Dogs Legion, this can be put to rest as an official crossover instead. And it's like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
This is an event that happened in both universes. It's shown in both universes. Mm-hmm. How are both universes not the same universe? How are they not connected? It doesn't make any sense. What it seems like to me is that they really wanted to connect these two, and then when Watch Dogs 1 didn't land with absolute popularity, they pussied out on it. Yeah. And they backed out.
Right.
Then in Watch Dogs 2, you can actually find a poster, I believe, for the Assassin's Creed movie and Ubisoft, I believe, and stuff like that. So it was like another weird link, but it didn't make much sense. And then in, Legion, you said they have a playable character, Darcy. And they even have things reaching back to the Assassin's Brotherhood. And so a lot of people justify it. They're like, well, maybe in the Watch Dogs universe, the Assassin's Brotherhood exists, but it doesn't exist in the same way as it does in the Assassin's Creed universe. But in the Assassin's Creed universe, also CTOS and Bloom exist, but not in the same way we see them in Watch Dogs. Maybe they're like parallel universes. It's like, why? Why? Like, I still consider them part of the same, and I don't care if someone calls it headcanon or what someone calls it. I could care less. Because it's like, it's Occam's razor. It is the most simple explanation, is that they are in the same damn universe. It was such a dumb way to do it. And can you imagine, dude, like, think about the possibilities of this. Look at what Bloom did with CTOS. Can you imagine what kind of control they would do if they could combine CTOS with Animus Tech?
Yeah.
Insanity.
Awesome. Yeah.
Insanity. I mean, it's very obviously a setup for like a dystopian world that Watch Dogs is already headed for. And yet they want to keep doing these crossovers, but they don't want to do anything with it, which I know could be its own thing. I think eventually we could actually make even a video just straight up talking about why we believe for sure that those are the same universe.
Yeah.
But that's not the point of this video. The point is just to show how they fumbled their modern day story. They fumbled Desmond. Mm-hmm. They didn't know what to do with the faceless people that they made you play as in first person. You know, they fumbled. I would say they handled Layla well enough. Although they just jam her in an apartment in Odyssey and don't really let you do anything. So I think the creativity was going downhill. They weren't putting as much effort in to the gameplay side of the modern day story as they were in older games, I would say.
Right.
But then, not only did all that happen, they also then prioritized crossovers over actual canon continuations of their story, and moved down to today. They have positioned themselves to move the entire modern day story to their dumb AC Infinity or Animus or whatever they rename it by the time it comes out app. And that's it. It's like they can't decide. If they would at least go downhill to the point where they phased it out completely, I would be disappointed. But I would be like, okay, well, all of that stuff canonically happened. Desmond, the first Civ, you know, William, his depression, Cross's betrayal, Lucy, all this stuff happened, right? Even Bassam in the modern day. It all happened. Maybe now we're just looking at the past. We're looking at Japan. We're looking at, you know, Africa, India, all these different interesting countries that are interesting. I could let it go. I'd be disappointed, but I could let it go. Mm-hmm. I think what's harder is that they keep yo-yoing it. Oh, now it matters a ton. Now it doesn't matter much. Now it matters again. Now it doesn't matter at all. It's going to be relegated to supplementary material on an app.
Right.
Which will not last. That app won't last. I can go back and play the Desmond missions in AC3. Mm-hmm. Anytime I want. I can go back and do that. I can go back and wander through the halls of Abstergo and search computers. I can do that. Apps don't last. Think about apps like Halo Waypoint or like COD Elite. You know, those old companion apps for video games? You know what inevitably happens to them? They shut down. Apps are pretty much always online only, too. What happens when they decide, well, we'll just shut that down? Which they did to the multiplayer components of AC3, Revelations, Brotherhood, which actually had some real modern day story stuff in it. It had lore, it had emails, it had hacks from Erudito, which, you know, was a hacking group similar to in the Watch Dogs universe, similar to DedSec, where they were hacking Abstergo and trying to get the truth out. The point I'm getting to in the long run is I can go back and enjoy the offline portions of the modern story that tie canonically into the Assassin's Creed universe. Whatever you think about Watch Dogs is your call. I view it as the same. You don't have to. I don't care. But I can enjoy those things. But all of the stuff they've already had a track record of removing, which we talked about recently in a multiplayer video about why we didn't trust the future of the series, they already killed a lot of components, and with those they killed some of the story of the modern day. It's only preserved through people's recordings, screenshots, you know, data mining. I believe it was even patched out of the PC versions in a lot of ways. There were patches released that removed playable videos that you would unlock of like Abstergo, Warren Vidic, things like this. My point is they've already done an online portion of the modern day story and they already stripped it out. That already happened. So now you're telling me that this thing you fumbled the bag on 50 times, you're now moving to an app.
Right.
Why do you want me to care now?
Well, yeah, and
you're gonna kill it.
Yeah, and that's just kind of the weird thing too, is I feel like it would just be kind of disconnected from each other. You know, the Assassin's Creed, at least to me, has always been about both. You know, it's always been about, you know, some modern day people want to find some ancient artifact to help do something in the future, whatever. Mm-hmm. So then what do? You go back in the past so you can play through the story and find where that is, where that character left it and whatever, then you can go find it. Mm-hmm. That's what Assassin's Creed's always been about. But to me, this just seems kind of disconnected. Like, I'm kind of imagining just a Desmond game, which could work, which could be very fun. It could be interesting. Yeah, that's cool. But the reason why I think Desmond is interesting is because you're using him to go back in time and playing through Ezio and Altair and all these other characters, and then you go back to the modern day story with Desmond, and you can use him to figure out what's going on in the real world. You can kind of get to know Desmond and so on. That's the reason why he's interesting, is because he connects to these other games. You know, and if you just kind of disconnect the two, to me, the modern day story is not going to feel as connected to the games, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know, it works with something like Watch Dogs. I consider it canon, but Watch Dogs is a whole character. It has nothing to do with the Animus itself. It's kind of something going on in the Assassin's Creed world, so it works. But now let's say you're like, well, let's make a whole game based on Layla. It's like, okay, that could be cool, but I don't know. You have to develop it in a way that it still feels interesting on its own, and it still can work as its own game. But the problem is, you have to play that when it comes out. That's the issue.
Well, here's two things. Watch Dogs should have become a vehicle for a modern day Assassin's Creed
game.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely. It should have.
I think what should have happened is, you know, you have Watch Dogs 1, and I'm not saying every Watch Dogs game becomes an Assassin's Creed game.
Yeah.
But, like, maybe the occasional Watch Dogs game that comes up, you're not only a hacker, you're also an assassin.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And you have the free running and climbing mechanics of Assassin's Creed mixed with the technological world of Watch Dogs.
Yeah.
I think that could have been the way to very easily, like, imagine the gameplay of AC3's modern day missions mixed with Watch Dogs gameplay.
Yeah, right.
And I think you could have done that. And I think that would have been a way to make a vehicle to continue that story and do that. But my second thing is, you know, like, that's a way I think you could have modern day Assassin's Creed that they refused to do. But my second thing is, even if what you're saying is true and it's a playable game, which we actually don't know, when they call it an app, my understanding is that this app is going to link all of the Assassin's Creed games, old and new, because they described it not as like a Netflix of Assassin's Creed, but kind of a hub.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's going to be a playable modern day character, but here's my guess. You will make an avatar or some kind of character, and that character will then be able to read the supplementary information, read those emails, maybe walk around some areas, things like that. That's the kind of thing I expect is like a hub. And this is the most niche reference I can think of, but do you remember Call of Duty World War II? I believe it was World War II or Vanguard.
Yeah.
Where you would walk
COD
around
World War II.
Where you'd walk around the little area.
I forgot about that.
And it was like a hub, and they were trying out like, we got a hub. Or Black Ops 3.
Yeah.
Where you were walking around your little base. And that base was somewhere you could read stuff. You could research things, go on the computer, things like that.
Yep.
I kind of see this app at best as a playable version of that, or the AC4 version of walking around Abstergo reading shit.
Yeah.
I don't see it as a game. It seems to me like, even if it is a game, okay, I don't think it'll be a full-fledged modern day game. I think they would advertise the hell out of that, not keep that under wraps. But also, I think that this is something where it's going to be a supplementary experience, and it's a way to make the modern day story not necessary. And because it's going to be not necessary, I guarantee less effort will be put into it, and I also guarantee that it won't be preserved when that thing shuts down the same way they treated the multiplayers. They removed that lore, they removed that story. It is still canon. They just cut it out. You just can't access it. So, too bad. We wrote all this stuff, we made these things. Oh, now you can't see that. My problem with that is, let's say it's 2035. I want to go back and play Desmond's story. I can read the emails, I can play it, I can talk to Lucy, I can go around the villa. I can experience that again. That's a storytelling device. If you remove the storytelling device by deleting it, now I can't enjoy that thing. And that's what I expect out of their modern day story. It's like fumble after fumble until finally it is an online component that can be easily patched out.
Right, yeah.
That's where I think it's going. And to me, that's extremely disappointing, because I really enjoyed this stuff. I think that I don't know. I don't know what else to say other than it's extremely disappointing to me, because that's the direction I see it going.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just describes my opinion in general of Assassin's Creed Animus, or whatever they call it, Infinity. It's disappointing. Everything about this, everything I hear, at least as of right now, you know, when at the time of recording this, everything I've heard about this just makes me disappointed. It's like, why are we going this direction? Well, I know why we're going this direction, but why are we doing this? This is going to ruin Assassin's Creed. I honestly think, I don't really feel like in the long run people are going to enjoy this. I really feel like, I feel like you'll get the hype, You know, for the first year or so after it launches, it'll have hype, but then it'll die pretty quickly because people are going to be like, wow, this is okay, that's okay. You know, and to me with the modern day stuff, I don't know, I'm just disappointed.
Well, don't you think it'll inevitably be delisted?
I think it absolutely will, because I think the app thing eventually is just not going to work. It inevitably will get delisted, and they'll inevitably cancel all the modern day stuff, and then we won't get to play it ever again. And that's what disappoints me, because I know I'm going to be interested in it, but then there's going to come a time where... I know, right?
Boo.
There's going to come a time where I can't play it anymore. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, that's what disappoints me.
Yeah, no matter what it is, we think it will inevitably be stripped down.
Yep.
And simplified to the point where it's not necessary, because they could never commit to making a necessary modern day story.
Yep.
And even if it is necessary, they will eventually walk away from it again. They can't commit to it. They don't know how to handle it. And it's too bad, because I've seen literal fanfics handling the modern day story better than Ubisoft.
Right.
From like people literally at home eating Cheetos.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how they can't get it right. It's mind-boggling to me. It's been a problem forever. And maybe in closing, it could honestly tie all the way back to when Assassin's Creed was kind of planned more as a trilogy type of games. That it's very clear, you know, for 1 and 2, there was more direction on where they wanted to go. And I think as they started extending it, they were like, well, how do we extend this portion? And eventually I think it hit the point where they were like, it's not really worth it. Then they went back with Layla and thought it was, and now it seems like they're going away from it again. Mm-hmm. Nate, do you have anything else? I think I'm good on
Not
this.
really.
I'm just frustrated.
I'm disappointed. I'm frustrated. That's really what it is with the modern day story. There'd be so many better ways you could add the modern day story. You could combine Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed. You could do all this stuff, but they don't.
No.
And they repeatedly fumble the bag on it. It's disappointing.
And we care and they don't.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So let us know what you think in the comments down below. If you enjoy the video, you want to leave a like, subscribe for more content. We appreciate you very much. We do have, also, speaking of online games with FOMO, we do have a Fortnite code, which is DJAY123. Let us know what you think. Have a fantastic day. Leave a like, subscribe. As always, everyone, stay shway.